Alrighty, well, it looks like we've got most folks on board, so we'll go ahead and get things underway. I'd like to begin by saying on behalf of the Virtual Lab support team that I'd like to have everyone welcomed here today to our demonstration of the Virtual Lab. I'm John Chattel, and I've also got Ken Sparrow, the VLab's technical lead, on the line with us today. And together we'll be providing you the demo of the Virtual Lab. Let me get through a couple administrative items before we get things underway. First, we're going to be recording today's demonstration and ultimately post it to YouTube so that if you want to go back over it at your convenience later on, you'll be able to do so. And I'll send out an email tomorrow with the link to where you can find it online so you can review it. We'll also be having everybody muted to prevent any background noise from coming through during the demo. So when we get to the question and answer period, by all means use the GoToMeeting raise your hand feature to ask a question, or if you'd rather use the GoToMeeting's chat or question feature, you can use that as well. So before we get started with the formal portion of the talk, I wanted to try to get a sense of just what skill level or knowledge level we have in our in attendance today. So let me go ahead and briefly survey those online. And you should now be seeing a question asking you sort of what your experience level is with the VLab. And if you'll take a minute or two to go ahead and give me your input, I'll go ahead and wait while we get the folks to provide us some feedback there. And let me mention that this demo, along with the third and final one on the 31st of January, are really designed for all NWS staff. And so if you know of anyone in your organization or a coworker who might benefit from a better understanding of the Virtual Lab, if you would mention and encourage them to attend the last demo, that would be great, because we're really trying to spread the word about the VLab throughout the National Weather Service, and your help would be very much appreciated. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll question, and I'll go ahead and let you take a look at the result. And yes, and hopefully Ken can see that as well. And let me see here. So, can you see it?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
Let me blow this up. I can see it a little bigger. There we go. And so it looks like we have a pretty good swath of people. Most of us are in the, well, I've been there once or twice, or maybe I've looked around occasionally. But certainly there's definitely some room for people to learn more about the VLab. And so hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that with our demo today. All righty, thank you for your input. So first, let me cover the information on our topic slide. You can see that you can reach the VLab administrators at VLab.admin@noaa.gov. So obviously we can't provide everything you'll ever need to know in this demo, but with that email address, you can tap into the combined knowledge of all the administrators of the Virtual Lab.
So John, we're still seeing the poll response.
Yeah, let me go ahead and hide that. Thanks.
Okay,
okay.
Great.
So, so now having gone through the initial slide, let me mention, I think it's always good to start off with a sort of a definition of what the Virtual Lab is, particularly for those few who've never even been to the Virtual Lab. And so it's basically a set of services and an IT framework designed to let NOAA staff know about, how to share information, how to collaborate with other folks, both inside and outside of NOAA, and then how to basically do some software development and conduct applied research. So, that's good. It gives you some sense. If you have been to the VLab, you may just call it a website. But really what it boils down to is a collection of tools which we believe will help make your job oh so much easier. And that's really the bottom line for the VLab. It's there to help make your job easier and, obviously make the National Weather Service more effective. So it's always nice to look back and see where we've come from. And back in February of 2012, so that's about 5 years ago almost now, the first folks sat down and tried to figure out what they wanted this virtual lab to do, and within about a year, they already had a basically initial operating capability out there, so folks could begin leveraging it. And as it grew, we realized that we really needed a place with, sort of, room to spread our wings, so to speak. And at that point, back in December of 2014, we rehosted the VLab in the premier NOAA web hosting site, or IDP. And so that's where it is now, and there's plenty of resources there for VLab to continue to grow for the foreseeable future. So now we've reached 2017, we have a very mature resource available, and now we're hoping that folks can begin to move in and make use of it more so than even has been done to date. So I mentioned growth, and we have seen considerable growth over the last 4 to 5 years. If you look on the left side of this screen, you'll see a chart showing the number of users of the virtual lab. We've sort of broken this up into two pieces. We have what we call the collaborators, and currently we have over 4,000 collaborators. And these are NOAA and our partners, people who basically work together to help do something within the National Weather Service. And then developers are, as their name sort of implies, they're out there developing software. And we have about 2,000 of those folks working together on NOAA and National Weather Service applications. So on the right side, you can see that we've also seen growth in the number of what we call communities. And this is where the virtual lab basically does the collaboration. And we have about 200 of those currently, and there's been steady growth over the years. And then if you look at the projects shown in red, you can see that there's been really strong growth in that, particularly over the last, say, 2 years, as we've gotten more people on board developing code. So we also have another way to look at the growth of the VLab, and we use a Google Analytics to sort of track the number of users and then the number of sessions, as well as some other information. But in this chart, you can see in blue the number of sessions over the last 4 years or so, and the number of users. And again, there's been considerable increase over time. But if you were to take the number of sessions and the average duration of the sessions, in this graphic it's shown as about 10 minutes or so, you multiply that all together over the course of the 4 years or so, and you'll get over 27,000 staff hours having been spent in the virtual lab doing National Weather Service business. And so we're having a tremendous amount of impact, I believe, on how the National Weather Service does its mission. And so we're hoping that if you're not already a member or user, that you'll come join us and find ways to leverage the VLab to meet your needs. So we talked about the VLab, and I've alluded to the fact that it's sort of a tool, but it really kind of has two components to it, or two sides of it. One of these collection of tools we call communities, and this is where a lot of collaboration takes place. And then on the other side of the virtual lab, we have a collection of tools which is designed to facilitate software development projects and projects in general. So on the community side, you'll find tools like document libraries where, as the name implies, you can store and display documents that you may have in a central location. We have tools to help you develop web content, which is basically just web pages, but with the editors that's provided by the VLab, it's easy to create those nice-looking web pages without having a lot of knowledge about HTML. There's forums which help you discuss information with other folks, go over ideas and come to consensus, that type of thing. We have wikis, which are a way of sort of collaboratively developing some content. And then blogs, which are designed to allow sort of an expert within the community to share information with other members in a very sort of easy way. So then on the other side, we have some companion tools for projects. The primary one, or the most obvious one, is Redmine, and it's used for issue tracking. And these issues can be things that deal with software, such as, we've got a problem or we need to improve the software. But the issue could also be sort of a task within a project that basically has nothing to do with software, or a milestone, or maybe even a requirement. So Redmine is very flexible in its ability to meet your needs. in terms of software development, if you're doing it as a team, then you're definitely going to want a code review capability, which allows you to create code and then have the rest of the team comment on it to improve the quality of those changes and additions. You need a place to store your code in a way that allows you to manage each individual file so that as changes are made, you know what changes have been made and so forth. And so we have Subversion and Git repositories for storing software. And then sort of the final piece of a software development effort is sort of maybe a quality control. There you go. Quality control, or maybe to build the software. And so we have a tool called Jenkins, which fills the need in that area. So these are the tools that you'll hear Ken talk about when he gets into the demonstration. So just to give you some sense of what's out in the VLab right now, we have a number of communities. Remember, this is just a small subset of the 200 or so communities that are out there. And if you look down the sort of the list of acronyms, you'll see things that are big pieces of what the National Weather Service does. For example, you can see the National Blend of Models is there, which is leveraging the VLab to do some cool stuff in terms of developing this new tool for use within the virtual lab. And then over on the right-hand side, near the bottom, you'll see the AWIPS community, which is, of course, the premier weather analysis and display tool within the National Weather Service. And it's got its presence in the VLab. And there's a number of other ones in there that, depending on what your area of interest is, you may find something that seems very enticing. In terms of projects, again, remember, this is just a small subset of the, I think there was like 400 or so, maybe 500 projects. Again, you can see similar names like AWIPS and a National Blend of Models, but there are some others that didn't appear in the list of communities, and that is true that in some cases of an effort or something will have a community but not a project, and sometimes it'll have a project and not a community, and sometimes it will have both, depending on the needs of the effort. So it's very flexible in meeting the needs of individual projects and development efforts. So now that we know something about what actually you would find in there, the question may come to mind is, well, so how is this all managed? I mean, let's say I wanted to get involved or establish a presence there for a project or something that I'm working on. Well, this is where we come to what we call the key concept of the VLab. And the idea is that there is so much content to be developed, so many efforts to be managed, that that we can't do this centrally, that the virtual lab support team can't make that all possible. So what we do is we create the community or the project, and then we turn over the keys to the owners of those two resources, and then they, working with their teammate or collaborators, begin to flesh out or build out the content and make it fit their needs. But the good news is that the virtual lab support team is there to assist you during that process. So we're available, sort of normal business hours, normal business days, via a number of ways of accessing us to support you as you develop these. So if you need to send an email to us, or maybe to sit down and spend some time talking to us about how to do certain things, we're there to do that for you. So there's a few things we like to sort of get out in front of folks. We call them VLab facts, but basically it's just a way to highlight some information we find pretty important. And that is, the first one is that your virtual lab was developed and is managed by folks in the Meteorological Development Laboratory, which is part of the Office of Science and Technology Integration. And so, we're available to basically make it all happen. We continue to evolve the virtual lab using people's input and so forth. So it's a dynamic and growing resource, and there's support there for it. There's also some very important things going on in it that gives us knowledge that the VLab is going to be around. The first thing is that it's the official source of AWIPS software. So people out there who need to get a hold of the AWIPS baseline, they come to the VLab to get it. There's also an AWIPS community, which is the single source of official information, documentation on the AWIPS process. So if you want to know how software is being developed, when the next release is coming out, what's in the current release, AWIPS, you go to their AWIPS community within the VLab. And also in terms of the AWIPS effort, basically all the software that's being released to the field is integrated through a VLab process. So it's part and parcel with AWIPS, which is also part and parcel with the National Weather Service. And then there's also a recently implemented capability that allows people working on AWIPS behind the firewall, WFOs across the country, to learn about the tools and techniques in AWIPS through what's called the AWIPS Integrated Reference, which is basically some user information or training information provided by the VLab. So you can see the VLab is a very important resource within the National Weather Service, and we'll be here for some time to come. So what else can we do with the VLab? Well, there's a number of things. The first is if you just want to know what's going on within the National Weather Service, a huge organization, lots of activity, you may want to know what is going on just around the cubicle or in the WFO next to you. And the VLab is a way to do that. You can go into the list of communities and projects and see what's available. You can also join communities and see what is happening within the communities. And there's a number of resources that Ken will likely show you that help you get a quick view of what's going on, the most recent document posted, or a page that tells you what's going on in the VLab in general. So look forward to seeing something about that. You can also share information and documents that you have. It's got the tools and resources available for you to bring your content and make it available to others. We can also help you basically work through issues. So if there's some new idea that you want to get others' input on, or get some folks to think about a particular topic, then the VLab has things like forums and wikis that can help you get the input from these other folks and leverage the great resources that are within the National Weather Service. We also have the ability to help you develop new projects and services, and you'll see this done a fair amount within the VLab. And again, here we're using a whole host of tools and techniques, from web content to the wikis, and then of course to the and also the so with wikis and forums. Another thing we can do with the VLab is to if we've got an idea, you want to get it out there in front of people, maybe get some buy-in from some folks. There are capabilities that have been developed for just that purpose, and Ken will likely show you those. You've been developing something, sort of, maybe you're at a WFO, spending your night shifts working on something, and you think, hey, this thing is matured enough, I want to increase the visibility, find other people who might want to work with me on a project like this, or get management support. Well, the VLab has a way to capture those ideas and projects and get them out there so folks can see them. You might also want to, we have a constant need for training, and the VLab offers a great way to both find training and to also get it out there in front of folks, and Ken will show us some ways of doing that. Sharing code, as I mentioned, is very easy with the VLab. It uses tools which are well understood across the software development community, so it's ideal for that, even if they're not within the National Weather Service. If you're developing code in a team environment, then as I mentioned earlier, we've got the various tools that help you develop high-quality code in the most efficient way possible, and all basically for free, so you can't complain about that cost. There's also the ability to manage tasks, milestones, and requirements. So who doesn't have a project that they're working on that might use a little more structure in it? Well, Redmine can do that for us, and Ken will show us ways that people have used it to date to do that. We can also basically use it to find skills that we might need, people who are doing things that we're interested in doing as well, and there's a nice little resource out there that will help you find others that have these skills. And finally, who doesn't want their life organized better? We've got information, email, we've got documents, we've got all kinds of web content, favorite websites or useful websites that we need to bring together to make our project or what we do in the National Weather Service more efficient. And the VLab as a portal is perfect for aggregating content into a single location, making it easy to search can find, not only for you, but for others who have similar interests. With that brief introduction, I now want to turn it over to Ken Sparrow, who will give us our demonstration of the virtual lab. Take it away, Ken.
Okay, let me make sure I've got the right screen, which I don't think I do. 1 second. You're seeing a communication campaign, or are you guys seeing the VLab?
Yes. Yes, we're seeing the communication campaign.
Okay, let me change that one. No, that's not what I want. So 1 second.
There we go.
Oh. No, 1 sec.
Nope.
Shireen, I know. I'm finally there. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so so my name's Ken Sparrow, and so I'll walk you through, and hopefully within the next 45 minutes or so, you'll have a much better feel for the site. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end, but if you do have anything that you want more information about that's relevant to what I'm talking to right at that point in time, you can click on the raise your hand feature within the GoToWebinar. So I've gone to the front page of VLab, and that's just vlab.nsep.no.gov. I intentionally went here without logging in because I wanted to show a couple different things. One is that if you are already signed in to Google within your web browser, within another tab or window, assuming it's the same browser, you can use the Google single sign-on that we've implemented over the last 6 months, and that will allow you to transparently log in. However, that doesn't always work, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, but we do support external partners. Those can be requested by NOAA users, by weather service users. So if you're collaborating with university partners, other government agencies, people of that nature, and you want them to have access to the communities that you have within the virtual lab, you can make that request, and I'll show you how to do that. And they would actually use this form on the right here to sign in. And then lastly, as John mentioned in the presentation, we do support, or the virtual lab is accessible to the AWIPS network from the workstations. And so unfortunately, the single sign-on solution does not work from there because the single sign-on solution requires API access out to Google, and so that's blocked. So you'll have to log in with your NOAA LDAP credentials here if you are working from an AWIPS workstation. But if you're not, you just will come here and you can click on this. That will then sign you in, and I obviously did something funky. Let me go back. Looks like it's going to be one of these days. All right. So VLab, and I'll sign you right in. We have some things in place so that if you sign out and you land on that page, it will sign you back in. But anyway, so that's that. When you first land on this page, we've tried to provide commonly accessed information directly from here. So, one of the main things with virtual lab, and this is specifically the portal or collaboration services, is this concept of communities. And so I'll get into what a community is, but it's right here first and foremost right at this point in time. But let me give you a quick tour of the site, and specifically what I mean by, so that we have a common understanding of how to navigate around. So this top level page here, or these top level, this is a navigation bar, And so these are different pages within the site. If there are sub-pages, when you hover over it, you'll get those as well, so you can click on any of those. And they're hopefully somewhat descriptive in terms of the names themselves of the pages. So that's that. There's a global search up front. So if you want to search all throughout the virtual lab and the collaboration services, you can do that. The default is it's going to search over everything. And that's one of the biggest advantages of virtual lab, is that it's indexing all of this information, and I'll give you examples throughout of all the different types of information that are being stored. And so you can go to hopefully one place and find what you're looking for. You can also search over the specific community that you're within. There are a couple other things. Some of these you're not going to see as a typical user. I'm logged in as an administrator, so some of these things up here aren't going to be visible to everyone. But the things that are is this My Communities drop-down, and that's I use that all the time, and that allows you to quickly access the communities that you're a member of, and we'll get to that in a moment. There's also the help page, and so if you have any questions, I really strongly recommend clicking on the help page at the top. That'll get you to this Need Help page, which then gives you lots of different options for getting help. Like you can send us an email. As John said, we're available Monday or during normal business hours, and we've got someone on duty every day during normal business hours that's going to respond to these emails, ideally within an hour. That's what we strive to do. And so you can also provide us with feedback if you've got some suggestions. There's also, if you have an improvement idea, you can share that, because there's a VLab improvement team. And the VLab improvement team is made up of all the regions and the different line offices too. There's a troubleshooting forum, so some of the common issues that come up, we try to put those in the troubleshooting forum, and if you post something there, we'll respond back to you. And then lastly, two other areas, which is a little bit more advanced. If you've gotten to the point where you really need more assistance than just an email is going to help, you can actually request a consultation. And this typically comes up after someone has requested a community or a project. They've done things and they've gotten to a point and they said, I just want to get some guidance in terms of how we can perhaps do things. And we've done with so many communities and so many projects. We've been doing this for quite a while now, so we've gotten pretty proficient at doing different things. And lastly, you can request a private demo for your group. So if you want to get a demo and have us focus in a certain area, we are more than happy to do so. So those are resources for you. There's also the user's guide. So you can come up here and when we create a new community or a new project for someone, we oftentimes point them to the user's guide, because there's information in here that's relevant, like for example to the community owners. And so how do you add members to your community, managing requests, and so the common, what you would expect hopefully is there within our user's guide. And again, if you have guidance or if you say, hey, it's not addressing my questions, provide us with feedback and we'll make sure to update it. So that's a quick tour of this. So what happens when you first log in? So you know how to log in now. And so when you first log in for the very first time, you're just going to be a member of the Virtual Lab community. And that's the community we're on here. It has several things like science sharing. It was intended to be a place where Sues and Does could put their documents and share those across the weather service. A listing of all the different communities. You can also request a new community. After this demo, you may think, oh, I'd really like to have a community within VLab that is oriented around such and such topic. All that it takes is just coming here and clicking on this form, and it will take you here and you fill it in. It's a very simple form. So anyway, that's this community, and you're a member of this. But typically you're coming to the Virtual Lab because there's other information you want to find out about, and you want to be involved in, for example, the National Blend of Models, or maybe you want to be involved with MRMS or the probabilistic snow experiment. I mean, I've lost track. Haven't lost track, but there's so many new communities within the virtual lab that I don't have a good handle on all of them anymore. But we have tools that will help you to narrow that down. So when you come in to the site, you can either go to the Communities tab. It's actually on the default landing page too. I prefer this or clicking on the Communities on that front page because it gives you a little bit more real estate. But you can come into here and you can start typing in keywords. And I mean, you can peruse them if you'd like. There are, you know, a bunch of communities here, but so these are communities that I'm actually a member of, and that's something to pay attention to. It's my communities. So I'm a member of 53 communities, and that's just because, you know, many of them I've created, and others I'm just interested in. But if you want to see all of the communities, you can click on here and click on all available communities. And then you can peruse them. That may be a little bit time-consuming, so you may want to just, you have some idea that you want to do it, something dealing with the hydro group, or so you can type in here, hydro, and search based upon that. And then this is going to search over any community that mentions hydro within their name or their description. And then there's also the ability to tag a community, and we're making sure that this searching will search over those tags too. So if, for example, you wanted to be involved, or so you can then read the description here, and maybe that's enough that you say, yeah, I want to be a member of it. So all that you do is you click on Join, and then that switches from being, you know, the AWIPS Hydro support. If I click over on my communities, that would be in my list now. So AWIPS Hydro support. It's also some up within here, so you can see it's the third option down here, and that would take me to it as well. And so then I can go to that particular community. Another thing, so let's another area. You know, there's a lot going on with AWIPS. So if I want to search for AWIPS, I can do that. And if you see a link in it, what that means is that the community actually has public pages. So a community, by default, is going to have a set of private pages that are only accessible to the community members. And so you can go in and you can join open communities. By just clicking on Join, you're immediately a member of it. It is possible, and a small subset of the communities within the virtual lab are actually restricted communities. And what I mean by that, or what restricted means, is that the community owners, you have to request ownership. And if we went back to, so rather than, whoops, sorry, clicked on, we go back and clear this out and search. So let me find one that, so you can see it here, request membership. So if I wanted to look at the blend of CAMs, and I'm not even sure what's meant by CAMs, I'm not familiar with that acronym, but I can click on that request membership. It allows you to specify a reason for joining, submit that, and then the community owners will be notified, and then they can choose to either add you or not add you to the community. So that's restricted community. John said that there were over 200 communities. This is showing 165. That's because the other 35 or so are actually private communities, and those are ones that don't show up in this list. And they're things like we use it, for example, for our administrative group within the virtual lab. There are, you know, certain groups or communities that maybe you have a need for something, and it wouldn't make sense to advertise that to all the weather service. And so you can create those type of communities, but then you add members to them explicitly as opposed to someone finding that. So anyway, let's take a look at some of these communities now that you know how to do a search for the communities. And I'd like to let you know that we are looking at ways to improve this, improve the discovery aspect of communities within the virtual lab, because that's something that as the number of communities increases, that'll be more and more important to provide tools for finding that, finding those communities. So let's take a look at what's within a community, and John highlighted this as well. So let's take a look. We'll go to the AWIPS community real quick. And so within this community, you have pages again, just like the VLab community. These can be added or removed by the community owner as is desired, and it's just a simple thing of clicking on add, and then they can come into here and add a page. And if you add a page, it'll show up. You can see it's starting to show up there, but I'm not going to do that. So anyway, it's very dynamic. But let's look at what's within this community. It's kind of a representative of some of the things that's available. And so Virtual Lab Collaboration Services, the main thing is collaboration, right? It's in the title. And so there are tools that allow you to present content to your users and to get feedback from those users. And so as is with most websites, this, or I should say, you want to be able to very easily change what's presented to the users. And so one of the tools is it's a web content management system. And what I mean by that is if I click on this, because I have the role to change things, I can come down here and I can very quickly go in and use a what you see is what you get editor to change the messaging. So if I wanted to change the welcome to the AWIPS virtual community, the language here, I can do that. Just type it in, publish it, and it'll immediately be seen. And it's very easy to do. So that's one mechanism. There are also announcements that can be generated within VLab. Those, it's important to know that the announcements, that's specific to you. So what I mean by that is I'm seeing, for example, weather archive and visualization environment, an announcement with regard to that. Well, that's not part of the AWIPS community. That's because they've got this announcements portlet here, and I'm actually a member of that other community too. So that can be a little confusing to people, but anyway, announcements. Some of the other things is there's a full wiki. So if I went to the installation type information about it, so there's this page, building AWIPS with Python. There are other tools within here, and so I can go to any of these wiki nodes, and there's documentation on how to, new build script for building AWIPS. This is depending upon the permissions within the community. It's possible then for your members to participate in fleshing out a document or something like that, or it could just be a means for presenting information to your members. Another thing that's very powerful is that oftentimes within a website, you don't want it to go stale. And what I mean by that is the content, if it's static, then that people are going to lose interest in it. And so there are these tools, this is called a portlet, that can be configured, and as anyone does something within the site, it automatically updates. And so you can see the latest information. And actually, I'll go back and show you the What's New page on the VLab because I need to hit on that. But that's an excellent example of how to use these portlets. So, so we have Wiki, we have the Web Content Management System. There's a document library within each community, and so you can organize it however you want. Documents, when they're uploaded to the site, as is web content and the wikis, are all indexed. And so what that means is as you upload the document, it'll get scanned, and not just the title and description that you provide to it, but also the content of the file itself is scanned by our search engine, and then you can find it, hopefully fairly quickly. So for example, if I wanted to find the SSDD, which is a technical document, and I know that it's part of AWIPS, I can do a quick search, and it's going to then come back. And we've just last week, or I guess it's been about just over a week ago, we implemented a new search engine under the hood, and so things are really quick now, and I'm very pleased by that because I was frustrated by the speed or the slowness of the searches before, but now, searches are going to come back in 2 to 3 seconds at most. So, so anyway, you can see the software systems design description SSDD. I can click on that, go right to it. You can restrict your search over certain asset types. If you're only interested in documents, you can restrict it to those. If you wanted to include forum messages, and we haven't talked about forums yet, but I'm about to. I talked about the web content and the wiki pages. So, so anyway, you can restrict that, and if you click on that, it'll restrict it further. So now you're just seeing the SSDD. The same approach can be used, so you can see I'm restricting this to the AWIPS community. If I want to do it across all the communities I'm a member of, you could have just left it as everything or everywhere up front, or you can even just come into here, remove those restrictions, and it's going to then search across all of VLab. So in this case, the community, there's a lot within the AWIPS community 42, but you can see there are other communities like the Central Region Sioux that mentions the AWIPS Technical Library. So there, ACLO has entries and things like that. So ACLO is part of the Warning Decision Training Division is part of that group. So so search, I highly recommend search. You can also search within the documents and media. So there are lots of different ways of doing things, but anyway, this is an example of recent documents that have been added to the AWIPS community, and so you can click on it and get to it here. So if we go to one of these documents, it's here, and so what this will allow us to do is so there's the ability to see things. So what the document library does is it allows you to not only, you don't have to download a file to actually see it. You can see it right in line, and so you can see that here, AWIPS installation. You can go through and see, does this, am I interested in this? And then you can download it. You can provide feedback to the user and rate the document if you want to. You can provide comments. So there's a lot that can be done right from this, and then it supports versioning too, so that can be very useful. Okay, so there's a lot more here, but they're using the same sort of tools. One thing I'll say, the governance section is I think contains a lot of good information, especially for the different releases and when they're going to be like code check-ins, things like that. ATAN type processes and things like that. That's all within this page, and that's useful. But let's go and look at another community so that you can see the forums, because I've got so the National Blend of Models is another community that I think does a good job, and their main mechanism within their community is it's a forum. And so that's what they really use. And so if we come into here and we click on forums at this point, so they have a forum is like a message board. And so if you're familiar with the list servers, for the AWIPS list servers and things like that, it's similar, but there's a website that you can go to, and so you can come in here, you can do searches over it, you can see, so you can subscribe. So I'm subscribed to this. If you're interested in, you would join the National Blend of Models, and then you could subscribe to the forum within here. And then anytime a message is generated, it then gives you the ability, it sends you an email. And so you can actually respond to those emails directly, and then they'll be posted within the forum. Or you can send an email immediately without actually having to respond and initiate. It supports images, and so I always choose a bad option. That one didn't have any images embedded within it. Let me see if I can find one that does. Maybe this one does. Yeah. So you can see, and it's an excellent way for people to discuss problems or suggestions within the National Blends model, because an image, obviously a picture is worth 1,000 words. So, so anyway, that's a way that people are using this tool, and I think it's highly effective. And in fact, like I mentioned, this community is pretty much, they do provide access to some Google Drive folders, and they've got a frequently asked questions site, and that's actually redirecting out to a Google site. So that's another important point, and that is, and John mentioned this as well, a community, one of the great things it can do is pull content to one location. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of the content resides within the virtual lab, but at least the pointer or the entry point is on the virtual lab, so that someone new coming into your project or community can go out to the virtual lab and they'll know right from the start that this is the place where all the discussions have taken place. I can go, I can search through that. I'm not having to forward someone a bunch of emails where it was done through email. I don't have to pull in all my bookmarks, personal bookmarks, and send it to them. Everything could be within that community. So let's see, how are we doing? So let me go back, because I didn't show you the what's new page, and so that's very helpful. And so if you look within here, so we've got this VLab news, new communities, and new development service projects. And so within here, you can go to this page and see that information, or if you actually want to be kept in the loop what's going on, you can subscribe to each of these, and then again, you'll get emails. The new communities and new development projects, those get sent out once a day. And so assuming that there has been something added, had a new community or a new development service project was added, you'll get an email with basically the name of it and the description that was provided by the requester. So that's just kind of to keep in the loop of what's going on. With regard to keeping into the loop and what's going on, some other things that I think we're excited about, a new capability that isn't quite in production yet. It's planned to be in production by the end of the month, so next Tuesday, and that is, it's the Ideas Marketplace. And so Eastern Region is going to be leading the effort in terms of prototyping this. They were the ones that came up with the idea. And so let me show you what it's going to look like and how you'll be interacting with it. But so I've got it deployed out, and we have a development instance. And so if we go to the Ideas Marketplace, and there will be a top-level link to it on our within our community, within production. And so basically what it's going to be is a way for people to propose different ideas and then to have discussions surrounding those ideas. And so we've got a couple of different views. This is like a tabular type view. And so the concept is that someone can have an idea, they can go in, so let's just follow through. So you click on here, click on add an idea, you give it a title, you use a WYSIWYG type editor to provide content, including potential images, and then you can provide any links to this idea. Maybe it's related to an existing project or an existing community or something else. And typically we're thinking that probably the project relationship and the community relationships would happen at some later point in time. But anyway, you can do that. You can attach documents to it. and then you can categorize the idea using tags. And so, if it's related to, severe or short-term forecasting, you could give it a tag along those lines. So you add that idea, save it, and then it appears within the list. As a community member, you'll be able to subscribe to the Ideas Marketplace if you're interested in keeping attuned to new activities. And so if you're subscribed, then you'd get an email saying, hey, such and such just uploaded this new idea. And then you would come in here, you'd click on the particular idea, and then when you click on the idea, it gives you the ability to, this site's a little slow because it's our dev site, but you would see all the information that the person uploaded. You could download the document that they've uploaded, and then you can basically give it a rating if you want to, and those ratings could be used then to sort those ideas. You can also have a discussion surrounding this idea, and when you click on the idea, if it's something that interests you, you can then subscribe. So if I click on subscribe here, it's going to subscribe me so that any updates to the idea, you're going to get email notification, and then any sort of traffic within the forum for that idea, you would get that email as well. So, so by default, if you subscribe at the top level, you're just going to get information for new ideas coming in. If you subscribe to the individual ideas, that'll give you the opportunity to see information, discussions, much more details about the ideas. So, so anyway, that's the concept behind it. And then there are ways to sort the ideas themselves. There's also another view here. So if I wanted to view the table view rather than this view, you can do that. And then we're going to change the name on here from filter to sort, but basically you can sort it based upon the most recent ideas, which is the default, the highest rated, or the most viewed. And so we're keeping track of each of those pieces of information. So that's the Ideas Marketplace, and that'll be coming the end of this month. So be looking for that. Okay, so let me touch base. Do we have any questions at this point right now before I start getting into development services? If anyone wants to raise their hand.
I'm looking and I don't see anything at the moment, but perhaps another second or two.
Okay. So, all right, well, let me go into development services. All right, so on the development services side, there's a tool on the collaboration services side. Again, trying to find out what's going on. It may be that someone says, hey, I want you involved in our project, and they'll add you as a member of it, so you're automatically joined. Or it could be that you're going out and trying to find information about it. So what we have is, to support that latter scenario, is we have this, on the development services page, we have the VLDS Redmine projects. And what this allows you to do is go out and peruse these, the projects. And so as John said, many of them are related to code that's being developed, but that's not necessarily a requirement. And in fact, there are projects within VLab that aren't doing any source code development. They're using it for tasking and perhaps, or there are other instances where people are using it to develop requirements. And so I'll show you a couple of examples of that. So again, you can come into here, you can hover over these projects, and you'll get the description of what they are. If I wanted to see anything related to AWIPS, I can filter it, and it's just going to show up all the different. Obviously, there are a lot of projects in here that are related to AWIPS. There are also modeling type communities, projects as well. The National Blend of Models has one. There's the Hydra groups. So on the Hydra side, CHIPS, their software, issue tracking software, that's all been migrated to VLab. The SCP, Software Collaboration Portal, that's being used today to track all local applications within AWIPS. We're working currently to migrate that by the end of February. So there's a lot going on within the development services side. This tool here is going to show you, if it has this little arrow, that means that you can actually get to it. It's an open community. Open project. If it has a lock, that means it's private. But at least you can find out a little bit of information. You can click on the users. So if you wanted to go to the National Water Center, National Water Model, you can click on the user here. That's going to then take you and show you who the points of contact are, and then you could send them an email. And then they, if they agree, could then add you as a member of their project. So that's an important point. Projects are private by default. However, you can open them up and make them, it's called public. It's truly not public. It's to get to the development services side or Redmine, you have to be logged into VirtualLab. So it's going to be restricted to NOAA users and then potentially a few external partners where people have requested accounts for them. So so many of the AWIPS communities, for example, AWIPS projects have been, are open because we wanted people to be able to get to the system. So let's go ahead and so if I click on one of these, I can click on it. We use single sign-on again. I wanted to point this out because this is a common issue, and that is that the sites do use pop-ups. That's part of the single sign-on with Google. That's how they do it. And so if you get this little red X, if you click on that and allow it, then it's going to work better for you. And so if I refresh this page, then it's going to pop up and say, yeah, okay, which profile do you want? Because this is a computer, I'm logged into multiple profiles. I can choose my NOAA one, and then it's going to log me directly in, and you go to that particular project. So the projects are oriented along the lines of the biggest thing that's used is the issue tracking, and so these are issues of different types. This one here isn't very active in terms of the issues, so let's go to one that is much more active. And let me get a good example of that. Let's see. So let's go to the National Water Model Output Assessment and see if they're using that or not. So again, like on the collaboration services side, there's a drop-down list on the right that shows all of the projects that you're a member of. You're probably going to be a member of many less than this, but that's an easy way to access them. The open projects don't show up here, but you can click on the projects list, and then you'll see all the community or projects you're a member of, as well as the ones that are open or public. And so if I do a find within here, I'm going to look for the National Water Model Output, okay, assessment. We'll take a look at that. Okay, and so you can see within here who are the members of the project, the latest news with regard to the project, and that's published. The activity that's going on, how active. So you can see that this is a pretty active group. Today they've had one bug that's been reported, and then there's code can be checked in here too. So the issues. So these are all the different issues, and they're powerful ways to filter those issues. You can create custom queries based upon, if I wanted to see only my open issues, I'm not a member, an active member of this project, so that would be none. But anyway, you can click on those. You can also come in here and add filters. If I wanted to say the author was such and such, and come in here and then apply that. And so anyway, it quickly gives you a way to narrow in on the issues that might be important to you. The new issues, this is just issue tracking. So you select the type of issue it is. Is it a bug? Is it a task, feature, support, documentation? There are a bunch of different, we call these trackers, a bunch of different trackers within VLab, but subjects. So anyway, I'm not going to get into all this detail, but needless to say, there's a lot of power within this. This portion of VLab took off on its own because nothing like this was being offered by the Weather Service. And so it creates customized Gantt charts based upon the fields, the issues that are being added and updated. You can put time spent, percent complete, relationships. So if one issue is related to another, it depends, is a blocker. If there's a delay, all that can be used. So many of our projects actually use that capability and plan things out and show the order in which work has to be completed. So that's all very powerful. You can upload documents. There is a wiki here too per project. So if you have specific information regarding your project, that's an excellent way of creating that information regarding the project. And then there's a repository view, which allows you to then see the underlying repository. And so, they only have one branch here within this project, but many others, you can have different branches. The project repository could be Git or it could be Subversion, depending upon your familiarity and what the nature of what you're doing. And then for the project owners, there's a settings tab that only shows up for them, and that allows you to go in and make changes to your project, add the members to it, create new issue categories for sorting, filtering, things like that. So that's a very powerful group of of capabilities. Let me see what else I want to touch on. I didn't touch on Find an Expert page, so that's on the collaboration services. So we could touch on that if time allows in a minute. And there's also a roadmap. Let me show you. So within the Virtual Lab project, we have a project too, and there's a roadmap. And we use the roadmap to keep track of work that's being done within each of, we have 2 releases of per month within the Virtual Lab, and so we're constantly striving to improve the system. And so we're tracking all of the work within these releases, and you can go to our roadmap to see what type of activities we're working on. And so, for example, we're updating, migrating SCP, I mentioned that. So that's this task here. And so we're working with like Paul Jędrowski and John Olson and Ashley Kells on that. So that's that. I'm trying to think, John, anything else you can think of that I've missed on the project side?
Maybe you could just quickly introduce Garrett and Jenkins.
Yeah,
the
sure.
concept of a code review and. Oh.
Yeah, very good. So one of the things that we call it an advanced feature, it's something that's required if you're doing AWIPS development, and it's best practice, and that is, let's say, for example, you do have a project, and I'll show you, we actually have our code within the Virtual Lab is managed this way too. And that is, if we go to this, we have a specific project called VLab Administration. There are multiple underlying repositories, and for each of those repositories, what ends up happening is that when you have one or two people within a project, and maybe there's a lot of trust between those members, you can go in and maybe it's okay for people to just check things in right into the repository. And if you haven't used revision control, then that's a great first step to start using revision control. But at some point, you want to ensure that all of the code making it into the repository has been reviewed. And so we have another tool, and it's called Garrett, and it supports code review. And it works with Git repositories. And so what ends up happening is that, so I can come in here, and I guess this doesn't really demonstrate it, but let me go and I'll show you. So if I'll go to VLab, and we'll go to code review. We don't have single sign-on for this yet, but we will. And so I have to sign in with my NOAA credentials. I think I mistyped, yeah. Okay, so I click on My Changes, and so what I have here are these are changes that have been pushed to me, and they're ready for review. And so, for example, there's this track to Redmine migration script. That's what I was talking. That's the software collaboration portal uses track. So we're having to make some changes to this tool to get it to work. And so Jason Burks is the lead engineer on that task. And so what we can do is we can come in here, and so he's pushing these changes up for review. And so what this allows me to do is very quickly see the sort of changes that were required in order to get this tool to work for the particular task we're working on, and give me the opportunity to not only visually look at the code, and let's say I had an issue with some of the code here, I can double click, hit C, and then put comments directly within the code. So that's, and then we can have a discussion back and forth. And if I don't approve of the changes, or I say, you need to fix these things before we actually have it show up in our repository, I can do so, and it allows me then to come in here. I can give it a code review and say -1. I would prefer that you didn't submit this, and give a reason, and there'd be the comments within the code. And then Jason then has the opportunity to amend his change, push it back up, address those concerns, and then once finally I say, yeah, I'm happy with it, I can click on that code review +2, or give it a +2, say looks good to me, approved. If it's a bigger team and you want more than one person reviewing the code, some people won't have this +2. They're not going to be able to approve it, but what they'll be able to do is they'll be able to click on looks good to me, but someone else must approve. Okay, and so that's a very, very quick summary of code review. The other thing that takes place is that we have verification. And so verification, you can see that this was verified by Jenkins. And what's that mean? Basically what it means is that for this particular project, all that we're doing is making sure that the project meets certain standards. And that is that when someone's checking something in, they actually have an issue that they're assigned and that they're working on, so that they're not just checking stuff in and not documenting why they're checking it in. So that's what we're doing here. It's pretty minimal. In some projects, they could actually check in JUnit tests, and Jenkins will run those JUnit tests and ensure that the code compiles as well as that they run successfully. And so if they don't, they're going to get emailed back saying, hey, Jenkins failed, and you can't merge anything in until the verification occurred. So it's a combination of verification and then a code review. So that's a very powerful tool. We have a lot of projects that are using this, and So anyway, that's a very short, brief summary of Garrett and Jenkins. The other thing I didn't show you that I think is worth mentioning because it's relevant to the Weather Service is that under the projects, we do have a number of projects where it's not around code like I mentioned earlier, but they're actually forecast offices, WFOs, and what they're using Redmine for is to track the issues within their site. So for example, so we got this WFOs category, and then within Central Region, there are the Central Region SUs, there's FSD, ILX, and then so there are a number of those in Eastern Region, like LWX. You know, they've broken their, you can do this where you can actually break down your project into sub-projects. So they've got one for ITO, SU, WCM, and then close. So if there are specific issues for the ITO, you can come in here, look at them, and then that's a way that they can then track the work that's taking place within their WFO itself, and they find that very useful. So you can. So anyway, that's something that if it you would find of interest to yourself, you can make a request. So that's the last thing I want to show, and that is how do you make that request. And so if you come back to the welcome page, you come into here, and so you can see right here, request a new community, that link. You can also do it right from there. So if you wanted to request a new project, you can do it right from there or right here. In both cases, it's going to take you to this page. Like this is a new project, you specify the name, the description, and then give it a project identifier if you have a recommendation. And then basically let us know what you need. These, we're very fast at responding to these. If you're not asking for something crazy, typically you're going to get that the same day or next business day. So, so I'll leave it at that. So now it's time for questions if there are any, and hopefully you found this helpful.
If you have a question, feel free to enter it into the questions section of the interface, or you can raise your hand. All right, nope. Oh, there's someone. Okay, we have a question. Let's see. So it's from Gregory Grossman again, and he wants to know where do you check code in via the VLab?
So the typical way that that's going to work is, so if you're a member of a project, there are instructions within the project on checking out the code. So, so for example, let me show you, let me get you to an example. All right, so if we come up here and we go to, I'm trying to think of maybe one of the AWIPS projects. So that's kind of complicated, but okay. So typically within the wiki, they'll provide a little bit of guidance on how to do this. But if I'm going to describe it at a high level, basically if it's an underlying Git repository, you're going to clone the repository. So normally the way that this works is that you're working from a local machine, whether that's typically a laptop or a desktop. So you're going to clone the repository. If it's a Subversion repository, you're going to check it out. And so you check it out. Then you need to make some changes to the code. So you would make changes locally. You would commit them, and with Subversion, that pushes it directly back to the VLab at that point in time when you commit it. If you're working within Git, Git's a little bit different, and it's a two-step. You commit it locally, and then you push it back to VLab. And we have lots of documentation within VLab on how to do this. at the top level here, there's this VLab wiki, and so within there, you've got guidance, and so like establishing a development environment. If you're working on Linux, if you're working on Windows, you're going to want to follow that. If the underlying project that you're working with is a Garrett project, and many of them are, then you'll need to go through the Garrett configuration. And it's about 5 steps, so it's not a difficult thing. This is a one-time setup. You set it up once for your workstation that you're on, and then you're good to go for however many different projects you're working on. Then you use the same process. So basically you do the checkout, you test it all locally, and then you push it back in, and then it's depending upon the nature of the project, whether you're using Garrett Code Review or not. But so hopefully that's not too much information. All right, so I see that there's...
You unmuted Gregory.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to let Gregory follow up if he had any additional feedback. Are you there, Gregory?
Thanks. That's good.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I guess there's one from Frank Alschmeyer. Yeah. Okay. All right, so restrictions, what's the question? I know one issue recently has been the inability to import RPM files due to AWIPS restrictions. Are there any future remedies to manage restrictions so code can be directly imported into AWIPS? So that's a very good question. We're having a meeting with Julie Rao, who is the AWIPS security person, Joe Zajic, who's the lead of one of the communities in a project. I didn't show it. I had intended to, but I didn't today, dealing with Gozar, the Tower S community. Anyway, they're the ones that put that together with the RPMs. And it's a great use of VLab. Unfortunately, for security reasons, one of the conditions for opening up VLab to AWIPS was that they didn't want people to directly be able to download it. So we're brainstorming with Julie, and we're going to see if we can come to some agreement, some sort of way so that for certain communities or projects where they get some sort of approval process by the AWIPS security folks, that they might allow it there, but not, obviously the main concern here is that they want to make sure that the AWIPS system is secure and stable. And so the issue is if they opened it up and anyone could upload any RPM or file to VLab and they could immediately download it and install it, then that raises concern from their end. So it is, it's definitely being discussed. It's a top priority issue, and then we're meeting tomorrow to discuss it further. So with the necessary players. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some sort of remedy. Okay. So any other questions from anyone? I see, Frank, that addressed your concerns, or at least you're aware we're working on it.
You can, since we have a few minutes left, could you show people the pseudo dashboard and the
oh, yes.
projects repository?
Yep. So thank you. Good catches. All right. So at the top level within VLab, again, pseudo dashboard is a way that Dave Myrick, National Sioux, is basically managing a handful of projects, 17 now. And this is somewhere where you can come up in here. You can see which these national priority projects are, and so right from here you can see the quad charts, who the sponsors of it are, the leads. You can expand the members to see who the members are and who's the lead and the sponsor. And that's just gives you an opportunity. You can search through. So if you wanted to search for the particular projects, that's here. That's available to people, and that might be of interest to you guys. So that's all there. The other thing that John was referring to is the NOAA Projects Registry. And so the NOAA Projects Registry is the intention of this tool within VLab was to give NOAA the ability to look at the progress of projects from research to operations. And so they've got this RL level here that is a measurement that basically allows an RL9 means that the project is actually transitioned to operations. And so what they're trying to figure out is, I guess it's been an issue within NOAA, that lots of different efforts start out, but they oftentimes get stuck at a particular state. And so this is giving them the ability to look into this a little bit more detailed. You can also come into here, click on the reports, and see a breakdown visually of where are these projects based upon based upon the readiness level. There's also the target system. So part of this is when a project is underway, where is it intended to be deployed? Finally, is it AWIPS? Is it going to be over on the NSAP supercomputers? And that's an area where we're working with them on planning on how to get them transitioned to virtual lab. So this is something that if you've got a project and you want more visibility, it can be added to the NOAA Projects Registry, and then it's going to have visibility all the way up to the NOAA level. So that's something that's of interest. I also didn't highlight during the talk, I think I mentioned it briefly, but the science and sharing area, this is a way, again, for the seasoned O's to upload content, and it would be shared across all of VLab. And again, you can take advantage of, so if I wanted to know, find documents that are related to tornado genesis or tornadoes, I can search based upon that, click on those documents, and then, like I said before, you can just click on it to see it right away, and so you can see that right there. And you can come in and actually, subscribe to or add a comment if there was a comment that was relevant, and that would then go to the manager or the owner of that document. So that's useful. Provide versions, and then if you wanted to download it, you could download it directly. So that is that. So, all right, you've got a couple minutes more if anyone has any additional questions, or John, anything else that you think we should touch on that I haven't?
Yeah, you might want to mention the concept of workflow and how it relates to the web forms that we saw.
Sure. So this is something we have available to you within the communities too, and that is an online form builder. And so, and in addition to the forms builder, so for example, the new community request, we built this form just online. We didn't have to write any custom code to do this, and so you within your community can do that too. So it allows you to drag and drop the different fields, collect that information, and then you can have a workflow associated with it. There's workflow is something that can be in many different areas within your community, and so what I mean by that is when someone submits something, it could be a form, they're filling out a form. It could be that they're submitting a document to your document library. It could mean that they're actually submitting web content, proposed web content, you can have a workflow. And what I mean by that is that when a request comes in, it triggers something, and it could be like a single approver where it then goes to the community owners and they have to approve that content. It could be multiple levels of approval, and we've had custom workflows where people needed to do approval at the local level, at the office level, then at region, and then national. And the tool actually supports routing that. And so how this manifests itself is that you typically get an email when someone has submitted something. And so like if I am working the virtual lab and we get a request for a new community, I would get an email. I could click on it and go directly to it, or I can come into here and, oh, I didn't, so let me do that too. Go to my account, and then under here, there's my workflow tasks. And so what that does then is new entries get routed to you. And so you can see here, software system design verification 3. So that has been put in the review state. So I can then come in and say, so that was assigned to my role. So now I say assign to me, click OK, and then I would come up and that document would then be available for me to review. And so I can come into here and approve it or reject it. But oftentimes you're going to say, well, what exactly has been done? And so, so in this case, they have a workflow enabled for the documents, so you'd actually want to go and look at that document to see, you know, what's happening there. For the forms, let me see. If we go back, forms are typically, it's a little bit more useful because you actually see the submission. And let me go back over here. And this is something, I didn't get into this, but the VLab is very customizable with groups, roles, permissions, and everything else. So the workflow configuration is in here, and the submissions. And so let's just look. So if we come in, and then there's a new community request form for this. And so I can then see that this person asked for a community name of star OMPS, and they gave, you know, they wanted it to be private. And so anyway, you can then see, and then that allows us to go in and either approve or deny it. And it'll kick off emails, and all that is automated. So, so anyway, that's that. And the last thing I wanted to show you, and that is, you can get to it from that front page again, or you can get to it here, and that is you can search for an expert. And I recommend that anyone using the VLab can go into your own profile page. This is a private page, or it's a public page just for you. And you can come in and click on Edit Your Profile. It allows you to specify a job title, give you a little bit of information about you, and then also add specific tags that might be useful in someone finding you. So for example, if they want to know an expert in you know, mesoscale meteorology or some specific area, subject area expert, you can put that in here, and then you can search, and so that if someone comes in and searches for, let's say they want to know Java developers, they can search, and it's then going to pull up different people with that being specified. So the place that you're typically going to get to this from is in here, and so you can see Find an Expert there. So if we do, let's see, I'll just do the same thing. You can also search for a person this way too, and then get information. So you can see the tags here, what people put, and it just gives you the ability then to find out more information about them. So there's information on the right that will help you with that. Okay, so we have hit an hour and a half. So hopefully you guys have found this useful. I just, if you've got any questions, comments, go to the help at the top of the page and need help, and you have lots of ways to contact us. And so everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.